Yo, how's it going everybody? I am Artorigold, and today I wanted to do a tier list video specifically to help people out there who are solo climbing and are trying to get to Diamond. Tier list videos can be very different depending on opinions and on what you're trying to accomplish. There are different goals for tier lists. For example, if you're trying to make a tier list just for people who are trying to get to GM from Masters, it would look a lot different. And if you are six stacking, or I'm sorry, that's an Overwatch 1 moment. If you are trying to 5 stack, I believe that that's going to be very different than from solo climbing. So if you like this type of content, let me know in the comments. Anyways, let's go ahead and dive into it. I've actually separated the characters. I am going to start with the supports. As you guys know, I am a support main, and this is something that I could probably talk a lot about, as well as the tanks, because I play them a lot too. And the DPS, I'll probably cover just briefly, because I haven't been playing DPS all that much. So, first up, we have Moira. Moira is an excellent solo queue hero. She does a lot of damage, but most importantly, she keeps herself alive, and that is very important when you're solo climbing. You can't really affect too much of what your allies are doing, so the best thing you can do is try to concentrate on your own gameplay, and Moira does that very well. She's a great hero for solo climbing with. So next up, we have Mercy. I'm going to put her in the B tier. She's extremely good value at these lower ranks because Resurrect is such a strong ability, and not a lot of people cancel it. You can pretty much go for a res almost every single time and get away with it. At higher ranks, people are going to boop you, maybe even stun you, like if they have, a Doomfist or even a Rissa with her Javelin. There are a lot of ways to stop it. But in this case, when you're climbing a diamond, you're solo climbing, Mercy is going to be very consistent and always give a lot of free value. I'm not going to put her at A tier though, because she doesn't have impact in the game in the sense that Moira can, where Moira can get kills. So that's a little bit of her downside. Next up, we have Brig. Sadly, in my opinion, Brig has really fallen off. She used to be one of the best characters in the game, no question. When this character was first released, I literally made a fresh account and got like a 34 win streak with her straight to like 4,200 or something like that. The character was busted. And now she's weak. And for the moment, I think it's okay. There are a lot of ways you could probably make her better. But she's got this tricky history where she's been just so strong in the past. They don't want to really buff her too crazy. Because, yeah, it could bring back some bad memories. But yeah, she's not that great right now. She has a lot of weaknesses, so she's just not really that good for solo climbing with. Next up, we have Lucio. S tier. Still a fantastic pick for so many reasons. You keep yourself alive, you keep your teammates alive. One of the best things about Lucio is his ultimate, especially when compared to Zenyatta. Both ultimates are very defensive and meant to be able to save your team. However, the overhealth is way better than the healing. Mostly because there are a lot of characters like Tracer right now who can just one-shot you. So these things can just save your team, whereas Transcendence would not. Kiriko, again, even with the nerf, S tier, and for the same reason. Suzu is extremely busted. You can keep your teammates alive through just about anything as long as you can kind of expect it, guess that it's going to happen, predict it, It's just an amazing hero. Cleanse off antis, everything. She does some pretty good damage if you can land the headshots. Her ultimate, even though it's nerfed, still amazing. These two heroes are definitely going to be some of the best healers in the game for you to pick. Next up is Baptiste. This is a character that I think is kind of mid right now. I don't think it's going to be very mid if you can land your lamps. However, if you compare Baptiste to Kiriko, I mean, it's just obvious that Kiriko does what Bap does, but better. The healing is really good on both of them. While you do have the AoE healing on Baptiste, Kiriko's healing is still more than enough. And honestly, the Suzu is way better than the Immortality field. So yeah, his window also not as much impact as Kiriko Road. Kiriko Road is better to help your team kill people than the window is. So yeah, I don't know. This character, it's pretty good at maybe the higher ranks with a little bit more coordination. But ultimately, it's like, why would you choose Bap when you could just be Kiriko? She does everything Bap does, but just better. Next up, Anna. Anna is A tier. She is really good. Her nano is extremely good still. Very good combo ability. You don't really need too much coordination to pull it off. You can just nano a tank and generally everything will be okay. Her anti-nade is still very strong. Kiriko, if they don't have one on their team, your Anna is just going to be so much better, right? Like if there's no Kiriko, then I would generally try to go for an Anna and just anti everything. Anna, still very solid. Zenyatta, one of my favorite heroes in the game, either D tier or F tier, depending on how good you are at Zenyatta. I would say a bad Zenyatta or a mid Zenyatta is just weak. It's just useless. I would rather have a Brig over a Zenyatta. He could be kind of good if he can land some hits, but ultimately his healing is really weak. His Transcendence doesn't really do that much. His little boop that he does with his melee is pretty funny. But yeah, he's not good. I would probably say F tier for solo climbing. If you're landing hits with them, then maybe it's D tier, but for now, I'm just going to probably put F tier. Discord Orb just doesn't really have that much impact because Tracer is quite meta right now, and Tracer is very good, and you're just not going to see the light of day. Nobody's going to peel for you. It's all around pretty frustrating to play Zenyatta right now. I don't think he's a very good hero to solo climb with unless you really know how to hit those headshots. Now, let's go ahead and move into the tanks. I think it should come to no surprise. We have, let's start with the easy one here. Junker Queen, F tier. They made her worse somehow. I mean, they buffed her a little bit, but her hitbox is still so worse. She has no value, and Kiriko also cancels out her anti, which is amazing about her ultimate, but Kiriko cancels it out. So yeah, she's just not good. She kind of needs a bit more buffs, or they could hold back on those hitbox changes, because I don't know why they did that in the first place. Kind of unnecessary. She's a really fun hero to play, but she's just not very good. Next up, the new hero, Ramattra. Very exciting. A lot of people say this hero is bad. I don't think he's bad. I actually think he's going to be B tier. I don't think he's going to be S tier or A tier, because the other tanks outclass him, and he's countered pretty easily. However, I don't think that makes him bad. I think he's pretty good when you compare him to all of the other off-meta heroes, or not the more optimal picks. I think he's very solid, but he has his clear weaknesses. I do think he's going to be pretty good. You're just, if the enemy team is going to pick this guy, Roadhog, who is an S tier, then you're going to have a bad time, right? But Ramattra is still pretty good. It just depends on what the enemy is playing. But yeah, Roadhog, I guess we can talk about him now. S tier. Very good hero, strong damage, ultimate's an amazing combo with Kiriko. His breather keeps him alive. Kiriko cleanses all the antis. The hook is still one of the best CCs in the game, or only CC in the game, really. They took so many out. So yeah, Roadhog's very good, very meta. Definitely one of the better heroes to play if you're solo queuing as well, because you can just get all the kills for yourself. Get the hooks, get the kills. Just try not to flank too much. Flanking with Roadhog can be a bad thing. You don't really need to flank. You can just absorb the damage on the front line and get the hooks that way. You don't have to be sneaky anymore to get those kills. So, yeah, Roadhog, very solid. Next up, Winston, A tier. An extremely good dive hero, extremely good to dive snipers if there is a sniper map. However, he has a really big downside, and that is, of course, Roadhog. You have to really be careful when you're picking your tank, because if the enemy tank is really hard countering you, you're getting killed by, Roadhog or Reaper or something, then you might want to swap. But Winston is still very, very consistent. His shield is very good. His ultimate keeps him alive, and he's just a really good dive option, especially if the enemy team is running hit scan or any squishies in the back that are very alone and easy to kill. Next up, we have Sigma, who I think is pretty mid. He's pretty good. He's just like Ramattra, honestly. I feel like him and Ramattra are pretty identical. They're both very good on certain maps, but pretty bad on the rest. But I still think that he's a really good option, because he does have some utility. Being able to throw a rock at a Doomfist who's holding up his hands, pretty good. His ultimate, pretty good in a C9 situation in overtime. You just lift them up off the payload, and then you just kind of win the game in overtime. So he's pretty good in some situations, but he's just not great in every situation. I would say B. D.Va. D.Va's a little bit unfortunate. I don't know. D.Va's one of those characters where I wish I could say she's good, but she's not that good. She's honestly pretty mid. I would say B tier. She's not amazing. She's basically kind of like Winston, but a little bit less damage mitigation or utility with the shield. Shield is a bit more utility to it. It can block heals. Defense Matrix can kind of block some stuff and can't block other things. It's very situational. She's a good dive option, but ultimately I don't think she's very good against some heroes like Roadhog. Roadhog can just hook her. But yeah, it's alright. I mean, Roadhog could hook an ally, and she could Defense Matrix ally and keep them alive potentially. She has some good uses. But I think the big difference between what makes D.Va like really strong and really like weak is her ultimate has kind of a weird coin flip to it. It can be pretty good or it can be pretty awful and just get 0 value. It's okay. I say she's pretty mid. She's an okay dive option, but I would say she just lacks consistency, and that's her problem. She does do a lot of damage though, so if you're able to get a lot of damage in on her and you're able to really min-max on her, then that's pretty good. But ultimately, I would say Orisa, A tier. Very strong hero right now. I think she does a lot of things that these 3 tanks do not do. She also can do a lot of damage, and she can also CC a little bit with her javelin and knock people like Doomfist out of his right click, which is really helpful. You can do the same thing against Ramattra. Hasn't hit ranked mode yet, but her javelin's really good. I would say her ultimate's okay, but there are a lot of people that just get out of the ultimate, so it's not that big of a deal. I would say mostly just her standard kit is just very solid for a frontline tank, especially when playing on defense. Next up is Zarya. She's C tier. She's mid. She has some uses, but yeah, she's just not as strong as she used to be. Obviously, she dominated Season 1, and now she's okay. I wouldn't say she's great. A lot of tanks rather, are just way better than her. Wrecking Ball. This is a character that has a pretty good use sometimes, but the rest of the time, not so much, and he's pretty easy to be countered. I would say ultimately he's D tier, not F tier, because he has one very strong use over Junker Queen, and that is the fact that he can stall. If there is you're in a situation where it's overtime, he's going to be fantastic in that situation. Next up is Reinhardt. B tier. Very good on some maps. So-so on the others. When you're playing with a lot of allies and you're in solo queue, they're not going to really use your shield as much as you want, so the shield doesn't get as much value as you probably expect it to be. But yeah, he still has a really good, helpful push on like aggressive attacks and King of the Hill maps. There are some where he's really strong on that. His shatter is always pretty good, especially if there's no shield on the enemy team, such as a Roadhog, then shatter can get a pretty good amount of value from that. Next up, this is going to be maybe a bit of a spicier take, but it also depends on your skill ceiling. As we have Doomfist, he is either S tier or he is either F tier. Depending on how good you are with Doomfist, he is one of the best characters of the game, or he's just kind of good. I think Doomfist is a really weird thing where he's extremely, extremely good. If you can hit all of your abilities, you know how to punch, you know how to go for the backline, you know how to kill the backline, and you know how to get out and stay alive. That's an important thing. A lot of people play Doomfist and they just die immediately with him and they don't know how to play him. They obviously just, they saw the patch and they're like, wow, I really got to start playing Doomfist, but it's a little rough. It takes a while to learn Doomfist. He's a very difficult hero to play, to land all of his abilities. Now, that's why I'm going to put him in the B tier. Another big reason why is because Roadhog is so good, and Roadhog hard counters Doomfists who don't know what they're doing. It's very easy for a Doomfist to hook it's very easy for a Roadhog to hook a Doomfist and kill him. Now, if you're good at Doomfist, he's an S tier hero, but that's not always going to be the case. And if you're solo climbing, one of the biggest mistakes wasn't really a mistake, but your healers have a tough time healing Doomfist. And if you're solo climbing, it's going to be really rough, especially considering what is your support. Like, do you have a Brig? Do you have a Zen? Well, then you're probably not going to do very well in Doom. You're not going to really get a whole lot of healing. If you have, some of the good healers and they're able to keep up with you, then yeah, Doomfist is a great pick. This one's very wild. It can kind of go up to here or it can go up to here, all depending on what you're playing against, what your team is playing, and how well you know Doomfist. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in B tier. The more you play Doomfist, the better you get at him, the more those weaknesses kind of go away and it becomes an S tier. But while you're starting out with Doomfist for the first time, it's going to be really rough and you're going to have a tough time. Next up, let's go over the DPS heroes. I have not played all of them. There's so many DPS heroes, but I will go over the ones that I know and I have played a lot, and I will let you know why I think that. So Junkrat, He's pretty good at B tier. He does a lot of damage. He can have some fun combos. He can one-shot with his tire if you know how to use its movement. All around, it's a solid DPS, but it's not always good. Obviously, if the enemy team has a Pharah, probably don't pick it. Next up, we have Mei. Mei is C tier. She's alright. She does pretty well against some tanks. If there's a slow tank such as Roadhog or maybe Reinhardt, you can wall them off and maybe get some cheeky picks depending on the map. But other than that, pretty mid. Soldier, very good. All around, solid. Probably always been pretty solid. You can heal yourself if you're solo climbing. That is huge. And you can run away from danger. Just be sure that you can get some kills and aim with hit scan. Reaper, S tier. Extremely good. He counters tanks. He goes fast with Lucio. You have your Wraith form to keep yourself alive. And he lifesteals. So he's a very solid solo queue pick. Bastion got a little bit of some changes, but he's still, he's just not that good. He's pretty fun. When you get your turret form, you can pump a lot of damage. And his ult, it's a little bit better, but all around, not that great. Genji, I'm going to say B tier. He's pretty weak when he just goes for the shurikens and the dashes, but his ultimate, and especially Nano Blade, remains to be still one of the best ult combos in the game. So I'm going to put him right here at B tier because his ult is still very good if you get a Nano. Cassidy, I'm going to put it the C tier. He's not that great right now. He's okay. He's pretty situational. I would play him on King of the Hill, but ultimately, characters like Soldier are going to be way more consistent and better and keep himself alive, and your ult is way more value. High Noon doesn't really do that much. Symmetra, F tier. She has one use and one use only, and that is King of the Hill, teleport, get there first, set up turrets. Pretty good. Ultimate, pretty weak ultimate. It's okay in some cases, but yeah, I would say she's pretty bad. If you're on King of the Hill, though, she's much better. Ashe, I would probably put at A tier. Having Bob is especially helpful if your teammate is not really, or if your team is not really on the point and you really need somebody to contest the point. Your ultimate's fantastic at that. Dynamite is very consistent burning damage. It's very annoying for the enemy team. And yeah, it's just like Soldier, pretty consistent, and you have an escape, which is something that Cassidy lacks, right? He has the roll, but the roll is just nothing compared to using the coach gun or just sprinting away and healing yourself. And the ultimate is pretty good value. Bob is nowhere near as good as it used to be, but it's still very good. Sojourn, still probably the best DPS in the game. It only gets better the more you play her. She is broken, absurdly broken. She was not nerfed at all. She needs to be hotfix nerfed. I'm kind of sick of this hero already. But yeah, she's broken. Learn this character because for whatever reason, they don't seem to be nerfing her. So make sure to get those games in on Sojourn while you can. Tracer is A tier. Her damage buff was huge. One of the only things I'm going to have to say about Tracer is she is probably going to get nerfed next week. So get used to that while you can. I'm pretty sure her DPS and A status is probably not going to last, but she is still very good. Widowmaker, A tier. Don't have to worry about anything. Just click those heads in the back line and you'll always get a one-shot, which is always big value. The only time when Widowmaker is bad is when the enemy team is diving you and has really beefy tanks. So yeah, don't try to force the Widowmaker if it's not working. But other than that, she is still generally always going to be good as long as you can land the headshots. Hanzo has a bug, which makes him pretty much unplayable in my opinion, but I'll put it D. I don't think Hanzo's a bad hero. It's just he has this really terrible bug right now, if you know what I'm talking about. It just clutters your screen, makes it very hard to see. I think the hero is good, but until that bug is fixed, I'm going to put it at D tier. Next up is Sombra, C tier. She's not very strong, but she does play very well against Roadhog and Doomfist. So I think just for that reason alone, she's pretty solid. But ultimately, I just don't think she's great for solo climbing with because they won't always have those heroes. You never know. So yeah, I'll put her at C for now. Echo at B tier. Very solid. Her ultimate can be pretty good depending on what the enemy team is running. I think she's pretty much just the same thing as Pharah. She's very consistent flyer. If you have a lot of enemy teams that play characters that won't shoot you in the sky, not a lot of hit scan characters, then Echo and as well as Pharah are going to both be B tier. I think they're very solid if you're uncontested, right? If you're uncontested, these heroes are very good for solo climbing with. Next up, this is the spiciest take of them all. TORBJORN S tier. I'm calling it now, guys. TORBJORN is insanely good right now. He's basically just Reaper, but higher risk, higher reward. So his turret is very consistent, does a lot of damage. It's extremely good if you put it in the right spots. And he has the right click, which is basically just Reaper shotgun. So they both have shotguns, and they're both good for the same reason. The difference is 250 health. This guy has 250 health, but with armor. 30% damage reduction on a DPS hero with 250 makes him extremely hard to kill. And then you have your E ability, which not only makes it so you right click and pump more damage into a tank way stronger than Reaper, you also have more extra health on gain, which makes you harder to kill. You're basically Reaper, but more damage and harder to kill, in the sense that you don't have Wraith form. That's a downside. Wraith makes it so you can get away, but you can kind of get away with it because you just pump way more damage, and plus your ultimate is insanely good. Now here's the thing about Molten Core. You might not think it's good, but it actually denies Kiriko Road. One of the biggest things right now is Kiriko Road, and it's so good, and it takes up all the space on the map, and the enemy team wants to push forward. Every time you see the Kiriko use that ability, you can nut all over the place with your ult, cover it with all the lava, all the sticky goo, and then all of a sudden they're not going to be able to gain all the benefits from her ult. So not only are you canceling that ultimate out, they're also going to take a ton of damage if they stand on it, and it's bonus damage against any tanks with armor. It's bonus damage on armor. So yeah, you have a lot of damage. You can get some crazy left click, far range projectile shots on people. Your turret is very annoying to deal with. And you're very tanky, and you have a lot of survivability. I think this hero is extremely good for solo queue climbing. So much so, I actually have a 60% win rate on him out of 8 hours. So yeah, he's very good. Anyways, guys, that was it for my tier list video. Hopefully you guys like it. If you want more of this type of content, let me know in the comments. If you have any opinions you'd like to share with me, please let me know and we can talk about it. And I'm sure that, you know, I might not be completely right about it, but this is my experience so far. And next week, we will see a new patch where there probably will be some changes. And maybe I'll do another video if you guys liked this one. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.